right, everybody, this is Jason with another episode of the Inked Up Runner. Really cool stuff. I'm actually doing an in-person interview. It has been a minute since I did one of those, and we're back at Percy Warner. Actually, we're at the Edwin Warner portion of I can't say Percy Warner because I'm not in Percy Warner. We're at the Edwin Warner, close enough, at the Edwin Warner Nature Center, and I'm with Jewly Hight. So
I brought my ink too.
So that's right.
I brought my ink for the occasion.
That's right. So the story behind Jewly is, so I ran the Warhorse Ultra last week and was completely unprepared. My longest run had been 10 miles, and I had not ran more than that in, like, I don't know, forever, months, probably 5 months, 4 months. Anyway, it's been a while. So I'm running this out in this field. It's this big ass horse field, completely exposed, and there's this lady that's just beating everybody's ass into the ground, and like she's just zipping around, and I'm running with another guy, and I said she has to be the leader, and he goes, I think she is, because there's nobody else, that's moving like her. I mean, we had a couple people that was like chasing her, but nobody could really catch her. And then so at one point I saw her, and I knew she was going to catch me because I'm slow as all get out. And so I was like, she's going to catch up to me, and I want to say hello. And so she ran by, and of course when I saw her walking in, I saw that she had the tattoos, and I love tattoos, obviously. So, I was like, hey, you got cool
on brand.
On brand. And I was like, you got some really cool tattoos. And so when I literally tried to keep up with her for, I think, maybe 3 or 4 minutes. And then I was like, fuck this. This is stupid. I don't want to run this fast. And so I was like, I will catch you later. And so she took off and went on to win. You ended up, what 33?
Yeah. I mean, my watch said slightly more than that, but yes, 11 loops.
11 loops. So she got 11 loops out there. So 33 miles.
Which is plenty.
Out there is more than enough, right?
Yeah. So
she got 33 miles and was the outright winner of the Warhorse Ultra. So before we get into that, like, when I pull up everybody's results before I do these and see, you kicked ass for quite a while, but let's start with how it kind of began. Did you follow the pedigree of what most runners do, or did you like just got crazy and got into some hard stuff straight out?
I don't think that there's no one linear path that everybody follows. I think that there were some hurdles that I had to get over before I really got into like trail running and ultra running, because I think I had kind of a predilection for wanting to be out in the woods as a kid, because my dad he worked for U.S. Fish and Wildlife. He managed wildlife refuges, and so when I was little, we lived on an island, and I just roamed around on land owned by the refuge and had my own little mountains, which were like just mounds of dirt that had been dug out of canals, so I was just roaming around. And then I was a very serious basketball player for a long time, and year round. And when you had Corey Woltering on, there was something that he said in his origin story that I resonated with, and he talked about if you play other sports, running is punishment.
It's right. It is. It really is.
And when I was in middle school, I was all in on basketball, but the basketball coach was also the track coach, and she had someone who was great at running the mile, but she just needed 2 more bodies to put on the team to send out there to run the mile. So she drafted me and a friend of mine and made us join the team and run the mile. But she just sent us out into a field every damn day and was like, just go run around the field, just keep on running around the field. And it was just hilariously bad, because my mom wouldn't even buy me running shoes. I had to wear like basketball shoes to run track in, and she wouldn't even buy me real store-bought spandex shorts to wear under the uniform. She had a friend of hers make homemade, like baggy, loose-fitting spandex shorts to wear under my uniform.
I've never even heard of that.
So, I mean, it's not a thing that I would recommend anyone doing to their children or anyone they care about. But, you know, so in my mind, I did 1 year of that, and then I was like, fuck this. Like, I'm not doing that anymore. So that was what I associated running races with. And then, I mean, I was doing just running on my own, and then this is actually the anniversary of whatever year the first race I ever ran was the Tomato 5K.
So that one by NRC, right?
No, I think the YMCA during the Tomato Festival. But that just happened yesterday, and that was the first race I ever ran in adulthood because a neighbor of mine at the time was a really serious, 5K, 10K, half marathon runner, and convinced me to do it. So I was on the journey of the 5Ks, the 10Ks, up to a half for a while, but I wanted to switch from road running, from marathons to trails, because they're easier on your body in some ways.
Right.
I mean, it's also like running an obstacle course in other ways, but when I got into it, I was a really serious dancer. I was really into clogging and was like dancing with a group in Laverne and Smyrna, doing the fair and festival circuit, and I'd gone to the National Clogging Convention to train to become a certified clogging instructor and choreographer and that kind of thing. And I did 3 solid, intense days of dancing and doing all these steps. There's one called a broken ankle, where you have to go up on the side of your foot and you loosen all your ligaments and tendons. So I did that one weekend, and then the very next weekend I ran my first trail half. And you can imagine what happened when you've been loosening up your ankles and dancing on the side of your foot. So then I completely rolled my ankle and injured it really badly, and I had to get past that to be able to like really get into trail running. And I thought it would be kind of, like too much of a hurdle to get past for a while. But you learn over time when you find good professionals who tell you what you need to know, what you need to do with physical therapy.
Right.
And, so I felt like right off the bat, I was dealing with those kind of injury challenges and having to figure that out too, along with learning all the other things that you have to learn when you get into it, like how to take care of yourself so you don't die out there on a long, hard day. I mean, in the early days, I ran a 50K in North Carolina in Pisgah that started way too late in hot weather. Like, it started, I think, at noon so that we could hear the jam bands.
Oh yeah.
Because that's what the race directors, that's the experience they wanted to provide us. But between it being 90 degrees when we started and not hydrating, fueling properly, I ran 32 miles and then was laying in a ditch, like hallucinating. But I made a friend in that ambulance ride. Another runner was in the same spot. We both had rhabdomyolysis. Oh my goodness, that's terrible. And we spent the night in the hospital in Hendersonville, North Carolina, texting each other, "Are you peeing yet? Are you peeing yet? Is it really dark brown? Like, are your kidneys failing?" So that was all part of the learning process too. And I think that, even though everyone has a self-directed path, but it's not a solitary path,
right,
I mean, it makes all the difference in the world to be in solidarity with just so many other awesome people that you meet out there and get to
absolutely
share time with, learn from, pace them, they pace you, or all that kind of stuff, But I got into it. I think it's about 10 years that I've been hitting the trails and just trying different things and figuring out, what I really enjoy doing or what I'm best at. But yeah.
So when you started out, from your athletic background, did you start out and having relatively decent success at like running fairly fast, or was that something that you kind of built up to? Because like I know my path, like I think my first half marathon was like 2.5 hours, right? Because you don't know what the hell you're doing, right? And I was out of shape. I think I started running in 2014. So and so like for me it was slow, and then I moved up and got a little bit quicker over time and stuff. So were you the same, or were you just like already kind of had that athletic part of you built in and was able to just go?
I think underlying athleticism was there in a way, but you still have to, there's so much that you have to work at and learn to adapt that to a trail running set.
Right,
like
absolutely.
The agility of it and that kind of thing. And I think that I was a little bit tentative, with ankle stuff at the beginning at times, but and I trained for my first ultra attempt. The first one I attempted, I did not finish, but with Run Wild, a group that Nashville Running Company had at the time, so
what was that 50K?
It was stump jump. It was just a whole group of people who were first timers training for the full 50K distance, or whatever the shorter distance was that particular year for stump jump. And I was just like, I don't know if I can do this. But I think, it was more of an incremental thing, and then also just being a really impatient and stubborn person. and then having times that really motivated me. But then, when I figured out and got over the mental hurdle, I can do this. I want to do this. Like,
right.
It's a joyful fucking thing.
Right.
To do it, then, I never let go of that, but it's helped to get older and wiser and learn about doing yoga and mobility, stability, agility, strength, PT, all of that stuff to kind of build a stronger, more resilient body, But I think I'd done, pretty well on the Southeast circuit in Tennessee, and a lot in Alabama, Georgia, North Carolina for a while, like plenty of times getting to the podium. But when I turned 40 in 2020, I think I was in the middle of Lost Falls 50K in Alabama, and something, like I had this moment where I felt like I wanted it even more, because I wanted to just prove something to myself and have fun while doing it, So I felt like that was a turning point for me on the journey that I'm on now, because I won that race, and then I think since then, that was like March of 2020, I've been doing some of my best running ever.
You were hauling it out there in that field, which goes back to your cross country, bringing some flashbacks there, running out in fields. But
oh no, that wasn't cross country. We were running around the track. We were, in middle school track. That was, yeah.
But yeah, it was. You were crushing it out there, and I think when you think about. When you think about your, how you've came along and progressed. So you stump jump, you DNF'd it, and then so you picked up the pieces. What was your first? Well, let me back up, because we never hit on it. Your marathon. What was your first marathon, or have you ran a marathon?
Yeah, I did.
Because not everybody runs marathons.
I did what is it called? Like the Music City Marathon?
Was it the rock and roll one?
Yeah. With a running buddy of mine who I kind of started out with and still run some with. She and her husband both paced me at Wild Florida 120. Her name is Donica Elliott. She's been running for a long time, and her husband's Randy Elliott, and he is kicking ass out there. They live in Western North Carolina in the mountains now. So now I get to go and stay with them and run in the Front Range of Pisgah. But yeah, I mean, it's like one of, you know, like some of the many people that I've gotten to cross paths with, and then just, you know, have some wild times and some great times. And you know, I mean, they've seen it all. They've seen all the shit. They were there scraping me up out of a ditch when I was hallucinating that there were fleas on the jumping on the sky. But yeah, so it was that marathon, and then
that's a tough one too. I think it is. I mean, that was my first marathon, and for me, like, I'm not at your level, so, but like for me, like, you know, I remember I ran it the year that it was so hot that they had to stop it. And so it was like in the 9. I mean, a guy literally passed out like right in front of me at mile 23. It was when we were in Shelby Park, and he and he just fell right over. Thank goodness there was an ambulance like close by, but I mean, but that's a tough one. So you did that one, and then back to the 50K. You what was your first 50K? You remember it?
The one that the first one I actually finished. Yeah. It might have been Bell Ringer.
Was it Bell Ringer?
Yeah, I mean, because I did it way early on, and I went back and did it maybe in 2020, you know. But yeah, I think the first one that I finished was Bell Ringer, and then, you know, have done a lot. I feel like I've done almost everything you can do in Alabama, you know. Mini races down there because it's the rugged ass end of the Appalachian Mountains. So
I mean, I saw you ran Oak Mountain. So funny story, my first ever trail race was Race to the Lake, which is in the Oak Mountain area, and it's that race where it's 10 miles, and you get like 1,000. It's like something crazy. You get like 1,000 feet of gain in the first like 2 miles of the race. It's like something. And I remember running it, and some guy was like, "How you doing?" I was like, you know, dying. And I was like, "Oh, I'm doing all right." And he said, I said, "This is my first trail race." He says, "You're an idiot." He's like, "I wouldn't have picked this one." That Oak Mountain area is tough, though.
It is. And I think the hardest, I mean, there's so many great races even in that park, but Blood Rock on like the backcountry trails is gnarly. I only did it because I ran Lake Martin 50. I ran Lake Martin 50 with a broken arm one year and won it, and got a free entry to Blood Rock and used it as training for Wild Florida, just so I could force myself to, you know, get a gnarly all-night run in. But yeah,
because Blood Rock, it's funny because when I was interviewing Jeff Browning and we were talking about East Coast races, he called out Blood Rock as being like a really hard race. It
is. It's like really hard.
He's like it's no joke. And then a backstory to that. I was interviewing Tara Downer, who is a complete and utter badass. I think she just ran. I want to plug her for a minute. I think she just ran like a really fast 50K. Like it was something stupid. I can't remember her time. But anyway, the year Jeff Browning won it, she was in second place chasing him. And the funny story was he came in, and sorry for the train people. But
it's realism.
It is realism. But he came in, and his wife was like, you need to pick up the pace. There's this lady chasing you, and she's like an hour behind you. So Tara was on his ass, which is amazing because, you know, Jeff is no joke. And I think she said that Jeff ended up putting 3 hours on her after that. So I think, you know, I think that woke him up a little bit.
It is gnarly out there. It rained all night the time that I did it, you know. But to do those trails in the dark, I feel like those Alabama Appalachian Mountain trails, not a lot of elevation, but the rocks are so rugged. It's like the mountain teeth that you have to just, when you're up on those ridge lines, you just have to kind of dance around them and through them. So it was, but I was very thankful for the Birmingham Ultra Trail Society folks that were out there, because they know how to put on an aid station. And I appreciate the art of a really supportive and enthusiastic aid station. Those are fun to do.
Well,
too.
That's my favorite part of the Yeti trail races are their aid stations, because they're wild. You know, you never know like what. You know, it's funny because they're all over the place. You know, you'll roll into one that's very quiet and subdued. It's very nice. They're very professional. And then the next one, you know, they're this is pre-COVID, by the way. You know, I remember I rolled into one at my first 50 miler, and I was like, you know, I was having a really good race, and the guy's like, "You're looking great," blah blah blah, and I'm like, "Yeah, I'm great." And he's like, "Here, take a swig," and he handed me like a beer, and I like took a swig.
Oh, I thought you were gonna say moonshine.
No, and then he was like, "Here, chase it with some Fireball," and he's like,
Fireball.
"Here, have some more beer," and he's like, "Here, have another." You know, it's like, and it's like a tale of like so many different aid stations.
Oh yeah, I did an aid station with a running and hiking friend of mine named Donna Dworak, who also lives in Nashville. We did a marital aid station, is what we called it, during the Dry Creek Marathon, which doesn't exist any longer.
That's so hard.
But we put, you know, we had a penis ring toss situation, and then I think the next year we also were in charge of the aid station, and it was really muddy out there, and we drove out this road to set up the aid station. And there were a bunch of drunk people like sleeping it off in their truck. They'd been mudding out there, so I just like snuck up to their window and like woke them up and was like, "Hey y'all, there's about to be some runners coming through here."
That was probably the year. You know what? That's probably the year that I ran it. The year I ran it, it rained.
Did you go through the marital aid station or the muddy?
I'll be honest with you. That whole race was just one big blur to me, because I wasn't planning on running it. I was talked into running it. And then we drove out, and it was wet and misty and just nasty. It was just such a nasty day. And I remember hating every minute of that day, because it was just not.
That was probably the year. Like, we set up the table to put the water cooler on it, and it promptly just, you know, collapsed right into the mud. And then I was like, God damn it. So we just put the water cooler on the hood of the car, and we cleaned up. We grabbed all the beer bottles that those folks had left out there, put them in a box, and then I ran a Music City Trail Ultra hardwind race right after, whenever it next happened after that, and ran up through there and saw the bottles still sitting there in the box. So no one, they might still be there. they might still be there.
That's nuts.
But I think, yeah, Oak Mountain was probably the first Alabama race I did, and I met some great Nashville runners down there that year. That's where I met Kyle Whalum, the musician who is now out on the West Coast, but met him and I think Brad Sample and somebody else down there, and then got to do some more running with him. He and I were kind of neck and neck and chasing each other at Music City Trail Ultra one year on a hot day.
There are always hot days, it seems like here.
That's true. It is. Always. It is unpredictable, but I have learned much more how to deal with that kind of.
That's all you can do. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a quick break, and then we'll come back and we'll hear about how she got really involved in the Nashville community, and then we'll just talk about some of her, you know, her running highlights, as you would call them, things that she really you know.
I think you mean wild times.
Wild times. so we will hit on that when we come back. All right, we are back, and we're gonna jump into, before we get into some of her weirdest, wildest running stories. How did you get involved in the running community here locally in Nashville?
Well, I mean, like I mentioned, I trained with people for marathons, you know, with Donica Elliott and a lot of other folks, and then I joined the Run Wild, the OG Run Wild training group that Nashville Running Company had started. And then I, you know, through doing a lot of the hardwind races and just being out at Pershing, places like that, I met a lot of the dirtbag folks, you know, and just yesterday I ran with a bunch of the Crazy Owl folks out at Beeman. So, you know, just participating in things like that, and meeting people. I mean, sometimes I'll go to another state to run a race and wind up meeting somebody who lives like 2 miles from me.
Isn't that funny how that
like
works?
I went and ran a race in Alabama and met this couple, Don and Mike Coben, who live like a mile from me and run ultras. And now we, keep in touch and run together sometimes. And Mike was the one that convinced me to do the great virtual race across Tennessee, the first pandemic summer.
The first pandemic summer.
He's a numbers guy. He's like an accountant, so he ran the numbers and said, hey, if we do this, we do 15 miles a day, we'll make it across the state this many times. And I was like, I don't know about that, but he convinced me, and I went so all in that the last month and a half of it, I did 20 miles a day. So there were like 10,000 people all over the world participating in that shit, but I wound up finishing like in the top 50 around the world just because I was, really going after it irrationally. And
That's crazy.
I was just out on the streets and the trails constantly, and then like ordering pizza and beer from Tailgate or from East Nashville Brew Works, something like that. So, through having adventures with people and building friendships. I mean, I've been running for years with a runner named Stephanie Coleman, who she did an ultra way before I ever did. So at the beginning I was like, oh, wise one, tell me what it takes to survive, and I got to pace her when she did her first 50 miler a few years ago at Dark Sky, which was also, I think that was the first 50 that I finished. But I really like a 50-mile distance.
That's my favorite.
That was
that's my favorite distance.
Yeah,
it's like the sweet spot.
Yeah, it is. And my best 50 miler so far was last fall at Rebecca Mountain 50. I came close to, I was right behind the first two men and just off of the women's course record. I did a 9:41 out there. So I want to go back and improve on that. That's my goal. That's my next goal, like the next immediate goal for September. But yeah, I think, like community, you kind of build it and collect people and build these relationships, and people move away. But like I've got a text thread that's called the OGs, and it's 4 women that Ashley Allholm, who's a public defender, she lives in Colorado now, and Lauren Gomez, Donica Elliott, and we talk shit and encourage each other and talk about what we're doing and all, because we live mostly in different places now. But I mean, things like that, and then the bond that forms when you suffer through some wild ass shit overnight, with someone. But I think when I ran Dark Sky 50 the second time, I met a runner named Erin Salmon. We ran, like 30 miles of it together. And then I found out she lived 2 or 3 miles from me. Crazy. And we started, running together and did a lot of that together for a time. So I love that you can meet people, you can meet people anywhere. Even at Warhorse last week, like I finally met a runner that I've done so many of the same races with, Francesca Muccini.
Yeah, she's a beast.
Yeah, and I ran, I was passing her and I was like, hey, are you Francesca? And introduced myself, and I was like, you're a badass. We've done so many races together. She's a monster of a runner. Yeah.
She's unbelievable. So.
Yeah, and and I love it when you get to do a race and just see I like it when runners who are even more experienced and older than me beat me because there's more to aspire to. Like they're thriving, they're killing it.
That's right.
I finished after Alondra Moody this year at Oak
beast.
Mountain.
Yeah, she's a real beast.
And last year at Norris Dam 50K, and just to be able to run with other folks who are.
Yeah, you'll just have to go. You know what? You'll just need to go up to East Tennessee and run with her and Ryan, because they're always running together out there. If you ever see his posts, they're always on the side of a mountain together.
Yeah.
You have to go up there and run with the old coach and run with Alondra.
That's worth mentioning because I met Ryan Anderson when he started. I think he was just starting like trail ultras with that Run Wild group. Like I remember doing hill repeats and things like that with him down in Shelby Park, and then I just watched him wrap his head around the science of it and just really geek out about it in a way that I really admired, and my mind does not work that way.
No,
you know, so
either.
I appreciate people who are willing to geek out about, you know, data and things like
the guy
like
is
that.
So smart.
And
he's so smart.
Yeah, so I started working with him as you know, he is coaching me as he does so many. You know, I run into so many runners who are working with him or have worked with him as a coach, but I started working with him last fall, and I think, you know, he made me restrain myself. Actually, he made me dial back the overall amount of miles that I might do in a week, and then got me into doing some long ass intervals. I mean, up to 15-minute long intervals, which I hadn't done intervals that long before. I mean, it's pretty long. So you know, he's imposed structure in a different way on my training, and then I let him do the thinking about all the details, and you know, and we talk back and forth, and I can ask him questions, and I don't always listen to what he says because he is not the boss of me. He's been asking me all along to sync my Garmin up so that he can see the data, and I'm just like, no, I'm not gonna do it because I don't want the universe looking over my shoulder and knowing everything that I'm doing, including him. But working with him has been so great, and I think I really saw the payoff when I was training for the Zombie Trail races. Added a new set of races this spring. I met the guy Trey, who does Zombie Trail races at Oak Mountain, and he was talking about his new races, and I ended up signing up Chief Ladega on that trail, that rail to trail from Georgia into Alabama, and training with Ryan, man. It's a flat paved course, but I ran a 4-hour 3-minute 50K on it.
That's incredible.
Which like exceeded what I thought. Like that, I thought that day was going to be maybe a, 4.5-hour day, but it was. Yeah, it was.
That's amazing. And you just made me remember what earlier when I was talking about Tara Downer. She ran a sub 3-hour 50K.
Oh my God.
That was it.
Oh my God.
I knew it was something crazy. I just had to
that's wild.
I just have to plug her because she's an amazing athlete. But anyway, back to you. But so we're going to talk a little bit. So you have some wild running stories or some things that's happened to you. You're going to tell a few stories about kind of some of your wild adventures. So
I got a top 10 list. So your top 10. Because I had to think back. Different things happen, different times, different years. But I already mentioned that I made friends with another ultra runner in an ambulance, and we've since gotten to run other ultras together. That's Stephen Watley. He's a race director and runner in the South. A great guy. He was on the Ultra Red team at one point. I don't know if he still is. And the first time that I attempted 100, it was in Florida, and they had to change the course because the trails were flooded. So, we were out there on kind of a makeshift course, but I had no pacer. And in the middle of the night, my husband, Bob, he was crewing me. He had a home base for the 10-mile loops, but it was 1 a.m. I was listening to a podcast about hallucinogenic drugs and ego melting experiences. And then there was this big cat in the trail, like right in the middle of the trail, right in front of me. And I was like, oh my God. I called Bob and I was like backing up, watching the predator, talking on the phone, whispering, like, what should I do? Because the other thing was I couldn't just run down off of this grassy berm because there were alligators in the water on both sides. So I just, I had a standoff with what turned out to be a Florida panther.
Oh my God.
It was a fucking Florida panther. And I felt like I was sitting there for half an hour or something. I mean, shortly after that, I decided I'm done for the night. I don't want to be going through this on my own. But the next morning, I was at my parents' house, and my dad knows wildlife in Florida, and he said, oh yeah, they relocated a whole male Florida panther population to exactly that area.
That's crazy.
Which he did not tell me in advance. And he's the one, another thing from my top 10 list, I ran through a controlled burn one time because my dad recommended that I go run in this wildlife management area when I was visiting in Florida. He was like, it was recently burned. They'd burned it the previous day, which means it was still half on fire.
Oh, yeah.
Waist high flames, one whole side of the trail.
That's crazy.
And I found my way out of there because the trail didn't match the map at all, and I was just desperately trying to get out of there. I saw a pair of Puma sneaker prints, and I was like, no one wearing Puma sneakers is going very far.
No, they're not.
So this has to be close to the trailhead to get out of there.
And I don't know if you saw it recently. Actually, you just posted a couple of days ago. Dean Karnassus, the legendary Dean Karnassus, was actually attacked by a coyote.
Oh,
did you see the video of that?
I did not watch it. I do not want to see a video.
Well, it's not a video of him getting attacked.
Oh, okay.
But he made a video after it happened.
Okay.
So go on his Instagram, and his face is like covered in blood. It is like wild. He got literally attacked by a coyote, and it's funny because he's like, I just realized I needed to get moving because I didn't want him to come back and get me. That's scary.
It is scary.
It's just like
that's the wild side of running in the woods, man.
It's just like Luke Boschweiler being chased by that bear down the AT. That's just nuts. You never know what's going to happen to you. I mean, he literally outran a bear. I mean, I guess it's not to say fair. He outran a bear. He outlasted a bear.
That counts. I think that counts, man. I was running on the Mountains to Sea Trail outside of Asheville one time and by myself, and had a standoff with a black bear, and it forced me to get off the trail and get down onto the Blue Ridge Parkway. So then I had to run down the Blue Ridge Parkway for a few miles and try and get around it because that bear wanted to be on the trail. It refused to get off the trail. But I've also had, I was running in Florida in kind of swampland, and every way that I tried to go, there were wild hogs that were out there rooting around. So, like we had to resort to using the Find My Phone app on my iPhone to help me like circumnavigate, because all the trails were just blocked by wild hogs. I mean, I love it though. I love the wild side of that.
That's awesome.
Yeah, when I did Wild Florida 120, it was just, I mean, the wildest side of everything you could imagine. Like at one aid station, the volunteers were telling us, whatever you do, don't turn left into that swamp because it's full of alligators and the water's going to be, up to your knees or up to your thighs. So I was like, I'm not going to do it. But a whole bunch of guys in that race, they wound up in the swamp. They turned left, and I was like, dummies. But I mean, shortly after that, I got stuck in mud up to my ass, and a runner from Georgia pulled me out because I had nothing to. I was next to a barbed wire fence. So,
that's crazy.
But I think the second night it got pretty wild out there, because that was a race that started shortly before sundown on a Friday, so that you could get a full 2-night experience, get your money's worth. And Randy Elliott was pacing me, and shortly after the sun went down, we had our headlamps on, we passed Carol Baskin's Big Cat Rescue.
Oh
but
my
this was
gosh.
like a little bit before all the Tiger King stuff came out, so I didn't know who she was or any of that story.
Yeah.
But there was a lion right on the other side of a chain link fence, and it was my second night of sleep deprivation, running through the night. So it just started weird, and by the end of that night, you know, the final miles before I got to the finish, I was hallucinating that we were on like a sugar sand road just for a couple of miles, and I thought it was made of white chocolate, and I was like, what can I just get down here and just lick it a little? Can I just lick this chocolate a little bit? And Randy tethered me to reality. I was like, Randy, tell me a story, please tell me a story.
Well, that's what you need sometimes, right?
So that was definitely a good wild time. I'm glad I did it. And everyone who ran that race got swamp rot, also known as trench foot. My feet have never been more fucked in my whole life.
That's awful.
We all had like open infected sores on every surface of our feet.
That sounds terrible.
You can even get that on the tops of your feet, it turns out, and in between your toes.
Oh my gosh.
Like I had to get an antibiotic after that race. And there are still pictures circulating between friends of mine who were in the crew of my feet after the race, how gnarly they were, because they were just like swollen and infected and pussy.
So true story real fast. We were talking before the camera came back on. We got mutual friends, Colleen and Joe Lawrence. So we have a group messaging chat, and it's funny because Colleen hates feet pictures and she hates feet, and so every once in a blue moon somebody will send a picture of a gnarly foot just to screw with it.
Oh man, I'll send you, if I send you mine, if I can find it,
I'll
send it on.
I'll share it.
Don't tell her who it came from until she sees it, takes it in.
That's right. Well, we
is horrified.
Yes, that's great.
And we were talking also when the camera was off about running the Swanee Perimeter Trail.
Mm-hmm.
There was one year I was out there running with Kimmy Maltempo, who's a great runner, and I think she also was doing a lot of like triathlons or something. But we were running the whole trail, and it was at a time when Middle Tennessee had more rain than any other time, and that trail was flooded. There were waterfalls everywhere. It was so wet and so slick, and we'd run 15 miles of the loop, and then I slipped and broke my arm.
Shit.
I was wearing a rain jacket, and I knew it was broken immediately, and I was just like, I don't even need to look at it, there's nothing I can do about it here. And we had to hike the remaining 5 or 6 miles, and it was just, there was water rushing down everywhere.
Terrible.
So I was like Spider-Man crawling, holding my arm, and crawling with the other arm, and got back to the car, and I was like, let's get some Taco Bell. We got Taco Bell, and she drove me back to Nashville, pulled up in front of the house, and then I called my husband. I said, hey, can you come help me with something? So he could drive me to the emergency room.
Swanee, it'll get you. I lost a tooth implant there.
How?
A buddy gave me a ginger chew, and
oh my god!
And
those things are intense.
It was the most expensive run I've ever been on in my life. It cost me $1,000 to get it replaced. And so yeah, and then another set of friends, with the Mad Cows, years and years and years ago, they did a group run out there, and a buddy who's highly allergic to bee stings got stung,
man.
And they had to drive him back like right then and there, because it wasn't good when he got stung. So that place is wild.
I love that trail because it's a beautiful, like a loop. Where else can you go and get a lot of different kinds of terrain and a beautiful, whatever it is now, 20 or 21 mile loop? I was once running it by myself and ran into the people from the university, the University of the South, who were in charge of building and maintaining and designing the trail, and I had just gotten lost because they've changed it a lot over the last few years.
Yeah,
and they were out there measuring. I was like, well, you might want to check the signage
Because
there was something is not right. But they were nice. They were nice folks. But I had just registered for Lake Martin the day before I broke my arm. I'd registered for the 100, and I was just like, fuck it, I'm gonna drop to the 50 and still run it.
So did you run it with a broke arm?
Yeah. I mean, I had surgery on my arm, and they gave me a brace. So I ran it, and I just, vowed to be careful, to just be like a little more conservative and relaxed about it. So it wasn't just like a blazingly fast.
So you didn't
50.
you didn't go balls out like you didn't do all the time?
No, I mean, I think it was just pretty chill. I spent the first, half marathon's worth of that 50 miler purging my body of some really bad Mexican food that I'd had the night before. I'm a longtime vegetarian, and so when I go to small towns to do races, sometimes it's a little tricky, like what you can eat. And I'd had some vegetarian nachos and a margarita that were disgusting. So I was shitting that out for 13
Oh,
miles.
no, that's terrible. I had a friend who ran the Mount Mitchell Challenge.
Ooh.
And he spent the first he'll listen to this interview, so I won't say his name, but he spent the first I think he spent the first few miles doing the same thing.
That's nothing to be ashamed of. Name it and claim it.
Emptying himself out very well, but you know what, he pulled it together and went up and he came down and finished the race. But
I'll do you one better than that. I was running in LA on a work trip, because I also write about music a lot and do a lot of radio stuff, and I was out there for work and running around exploring, and then I just had to go, and I found a trail entrance that took me right under the Hollywood sign.
Oh, no.
And I shat under the D.
That's great.
Desperate times. I don't know. Those are those are some of the highlights for me. Except I think the time I did one of those awesome sauce races where it's variable distances, very generous, cutoffs, and usually a loop situation. That was the first 100 that I finished after that, the standoff with the Panther in Florida, and I didn't read the fine print, and I thought it was a trail race, and it turned out it was 2-mile flat paved loops.
Oh no.
But I was just like, I'm gonna gut it out. This is a horrible idea. This is not what I was looking for, but I gutted it out and clogged across the finish line.
That's awesome. So I guess, we moving, just wrapping up things, what do you have that's ahead of you? What are you looking forward to? What are some of the big races or race that you have, and then what short term, long term, what are some of the things you're looking to accomplish?
Well, I mean, I've been working with Ryan to get ready for what is going to be a pretty action-packed fall racing season, I think. First Rebecca Mountain 50 miler, I mean, since I came so close to, like, I just had a blast out there last year, and I came so close to the women's course record. I just want to see, can I just shave off a few minutes from my time, and so that feels like exciting unfinished business. But it's also great preparation for Pinhoti 100, which I'm finally gonna get out there and do in November. And then in between that, in October, I'm excited about the chance to have a much better experience at Stump Jump.
I'll be there too.
Yeah.
But I will not be in your shape at all.
Since that was the first 50K I attempted and just had a spectacular DNF out there that day, I haven't tried it again since, so to circle back so many years later, I'm excited to go back there and have a much better day, and then that same month, I'm also going to do the Buford Pusser themed race, Walking Tall. You know who Buford Pusser is, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I won the 25K there a few years ago, and it's what makes that race kind of wild, besides the fact that you get a big Buford Pusser stick for finishing or winning, is that you cross like I had to wait 7 minutes for a train to to slowly pass by, because I popped out of the woods to the train track and the train had just started coming by.
Oh no.
So that's part of the course. And then there's also a rickety, rusty fire tower that you have to climb up and get your race bib, stapled or stamped up there. And I'm afraid of heights, so that activates my fear, but I'm gonna do it, and I'm gonna do it with a longtime run-in friend of mine, Stephanie Coleman, because she hasn't done an ultra in a while, and just that was one that she chose. And for me, it kind of, I can flow into Rebecca Mountain 50-miler, then do 50Ks 2 weeks apart, and then hopefully be ready to have a good day at Pinhoti. And I think, I ran with a great athlete named Deanna Doan, I think Doan is her last name, in Florida at the Swamp 50K in March, and I believe she's going to be out there at Pinhoti, so it'll be great to get to run with her again. I was chasing her in the Swamp 50K, finished after her. So and a few weeks ago I became a Hoka flyer, and I'm excited about getting to participate in community building events and do some trail cleanups, and to also create some events that I can invite folks that I know from different music scenes in Nashville to come experience and participate and try the shoes. And I think it's pretty dope that Hoka sent me the Zenal shoes a week ago. They came to my house. I took them right out of the box and ran the Warhorse 6 hour and did not regret it. No blisters.
And she beat everybody's ass.
No hot spots.
She beat everybody's ass with them on. So that's awesome.
And I mean, just doing, when I was saying the kind of revelation that I had of wanting it in a different way is really about wanting to see, to prove something to myself, or just see, I don't think I've, no one ever knows for sure what they're capable of until they try different things. I mean, working with Ryan as a coach, I go to Nashville Chiropractic to Dr. Lauren to get tune-ups all the time. I think I started going to her after I did my first 50-miler and thought that my back was broken, and she's a very rational, level-headed person who talks me down from a ledge every time I go in there, and she's a great runner herself, so she knows runners' bodies and mechanics, and gives me things that help me prevent injury or just deal with little issues like that, so I want to be helping broaden, running community, trail community, participating in it, and trying to do some of my best running. I've had a fun year so far. Warhorse was maybe my 8th or 9th race of 2022. So I won Snowball, I won Cummins Falls Marathon, I won Mountain Goat Half, won Milk Road 8 hour, won Chief Ladiga.
We are back after some technical difficulties. That's the beautiful thing about doing these videos out here meeting.
The camera
people.
caught on fire.
The camera caught on fire.
Almost.
But it's still better. I enjoy the in-person interviews so much more than the Zoom interviews. I just want to say that, because there's so much more free from the standpoint of, it's not as a controlled environment.
What you're saying is we're all over the place.
We're all over the place. And then I remember interviewing Liberty and there was a kid dancing behind us in our video there because he saw that we were on doing a camera, and he's like doing the.
I'm disappointed that we didn't get that kind of action today, but I appreciate the art of interviewing because I've definitely done more interviews as an interviewer in my life than I've even run races of any kind.
That's right. So before this camera dies on us again, we're gonna wrap this bad boy up. So you're finishing your thought on the community, the Hoka Flyer.
Yeah, I don't even remember exactly where we were, but I mean, basically, I was saying that that I'm in a fired up space on multiple fronts right now. You know, fired up to get after some goal races this fall and to be participating with Hoka, with community, you know, in and around Nashville, Tennessee, the whole Southeast, and I want to meet more awesome people out there too. You know, the only time I've ever raced in Colorado, I met the amazing indigenous muralist and ultra runner Utica Fields, who I think he was just profiled in a magazine after running Western States recently. But that's you know, cool. Like sometimes that's the best part of the experiences. You know, I met a rocket scientist running Oak Mountain back in March. It's like you meet some really smart and interesting people. Ooh, are we gonna get some dance moves?
No dance moves.
Sadly.
Well, we will close there. It has been a true pleasure with you, Jewly, and as always, there'll be a video and audio version of this, and that's it.
With choreography.
That's right. So that is it. These things are just always so much fun, but. Like I said, I'll have both these up, and that's it. I will see you on the trail.